Broadcasting across California with Nikki Lorenzo. This is Inside California Politics.
Glad you're with us this week. I'm Nikki Lorenzo in Sacramento. On the show today, the already crowded governor's race got even bigger this week.
I'm running for governor to make this beautiful state that we love so much truly golden again.
All right, so we talked about him entering this race on this show before, and this week, Steve Hilton, an author and former Fox News host, making it official. He is running for governor, trying to do something no Republican has been able to achieve in decades. He is the second well-known Republican in the race, joining Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco. A little background here. Hilton moved to California from the UK more than a decade ago, and he has been a vocal critic of the job Democrats are doing running the state. And Steve Hilton is here now with me on Inside California Politics. Thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for showing all the pictures of me with hair.
Oh, you like that?
Exactly. I was trying to, that's a little bit of my life story there. Grew up in the UK. My parents are Hungarian immigrants, working class people who put me on that ladder of opportunity in England. And here I am now in California trying to do the same thing for everyone else.
Trying to do a big job here. So I want to ask you, because it's been pretty unique to watch your launch into this race. A lot of candidates, they put out a video, they do maybe one or two interviews, and that's it. It's really been a week-long launch for you. And as I mentioned in the setup, former TV host,
yes.
Is this the media guy in you that said this is the strategy we're going to use?
Well, probably, but I think more than that, it's the policy guy. Because before we moved here to California in 2012, I worked inside the government in the UK. I was senior advisor to Prime Minister David Cameron. I worked in 10 Downing Street. I was really responsible for leading the implementation of our domestic reform program. So I've worked in these kinds of positions before, and so I feel very strongly about all the issues that are really affecting Californians. It's so tough for people right now, for families, for businesses. Everything's so expensive. Everything's such a hassle to deal with, the regulations, the taxes, the cost of everything piling up. And it's a big state with lots of different issues around the state. And so that's why I've been traveling around. We launched the campaign in Orange County. I was in Los Angeles that night, in San Francisco the next day, then in Fresno, the Central Valley. Our farmers and our ag industry being really hurt by a lot of these policies, here with you in Sacramento today. So, and we're going to keep being on the road because I really enjoy it. You learn so much when you meet people and you listen to their needs. Then you can really develop the plans that will help them.
We'll talk about policy in a minute, but I want to talk about the pathway first. Look, you know the math, you know how things work here in California. How are you going to achieve this? Are you going to be reaching out to Democrats? Because I know that there were whispers about you running for quite some time, and you'd said, I'm only going to do this if there's a real pathway. So how do you see that pathway?
I think the real answer to that question is the person that's going to win in 2026 is the change candidate. Everyone can see that we need change in California, even whether you're a Democrat or even, by the way, the Democrat candidates for governor are saying that. You look at what they're saying in their announcement videos. I noticed that Javier Becerra, in his video announcing for governor as a Democrat, said, the California dream that was there for my parents isn't there today. I completely agree. But who took it away? It was his party and his policies. We need change in California. So I think that is something that's broadly shared, that view, right across the spectrum. And so I want to be that change candidate that ends the 15 years of Democrat one-party rule, brings a bit of balance into our politics, brings some common sense, pragmatic solutions that are not ideological. Just practical things. How do we help families who are struggling to pay the bills? How do we help businesses, especially small businesses, who are trying to keep afloat with all these regulations? Practical things that go way beyond, Democrat, Republican, Independent. We just need change, positive change.
How do you get past that, though? Because we're in such a partisan time, and people will say, I need change, I can't afford anything. And then when they get into the voting booth, and we've seen it in last elections, and they go to the D or they go to the R. What's interesting is in 2024, on the issues, voters went more conservative in California.
Exactly.
So how do you get past that? Because when this race heats up, it's what Democrats have done in California since Donald Trump came to be. They're going to paint you as the Trump MAGA candidate. So how do you combat that?
Well, there's only one way, and it's what I'm doing. And by the way, that is why I'm getting into this campaign with such high energy, honestly, because we've got to work really hard to beat that, to show that I'm there talking in a practical way.
Is it almost like, what do you have to lose? And I'm pulling that line from a rally Donald Trump had in 2016 when he was trying to sway African Americans.
Well, that, on the very basic level, I think a lot of people would just agree that it's not healthy to have one-party rule. We've had Democrats controlling everything 15 years now.
I mean, I've had Democrats tell me that on the show. Former Governor Jerry Brown said that. Leon Panetta said that. Even former former San Francisco mayor and speaker Willie Brown said there's no opposition party where you have to negotiate. Like when he was speaker, he had to do some
I think that's exactly right. So I think even on that level, even before you get into the specific ideas and policies, that's a good argument. When I'm on the road and I make these speeches, and you're right, sometimes it's Republican crowds and sometimes it's much more mixed. And when you have a mixed crowd, you have Democrats and independents there, and you talk about the need for balance, everyone nods along. Everyone instinctively feels that. But I think that it's all a question of, that's what the campaign is for in the end, is to get out there, make your case. And I think that what I'm planning to be is the candidate with the energy and the policy and the clarity to say, look, people may think it's hopeless, that we can't fix these things, it's been like this for so long. I'm here to say we can change, because what needs to be done is not complicated. It's just simple, basic, common sense things, instead of all the ideological stuff we've had. I think that's really why California's gone wrong. Because of the one-party rule, the people in charge haven't had the challenge, and so they've got really carried away by ideology instead of practical things that help people. We need to get back to that. What
differs you from the candidates who are already running, specifically the other Republican in this race, Chad Bianco?
Well, I'm sure we agree on a lot of things, but I think it's all about who is the best person in the end to be that change candidate to take on whoever the Democrat machine puts forward. And we don't know who that's going to be yet, but in a sense, it doesn't matter, because the argument is we need change, not more of the same. How can the people who made the mess be the ones to clear it up? So the real question in the first stage of the election is who is best to take on that Democrat candidate and make the argument for change right across the range of issues. And that's really the point of my campaign, is to persuade people that it's me.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to get into more details about what you said your favorite part is about running, which is the policy.
Yes.
So we're gonna take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to get into the weeds on that.
Sounds good. Yes.
All right, we'll be back with more right after this. Welcome back to Inside California Politics. We are continuing our conversation with California's latest gubernatorial candidate, Steve Hilton, who is running as a Republican. Thanks for being with us here. So let's continue the conversation and talk about some policy.
Yes.
You put a post on X, and I want to bring it up right now. And these are your policies on how to make California golden again. Reduce taxes for workers, no tax on income under 100K, end the bureaucratic war on businesses, return to sensible spending, restore single-family homes. And I also want to hone in, too, when you talk about regulation, because you point to something that Idaho did.
Yes.
In 2019, they decided to look at all of their regulations and do an audit, basically. And that's something Idaho can do it. You're pointing California should do that. Granted, I want to point out that Idaho has a Republican legislature, so that might be tough. But how would you go about doing that if you were elected governor?
So the thing about regulations is, I've noticed that, like, regardless of which party it is, you see people come into office and say, well, there's too much red tape, too much regulation. Everyone says it. But somehow it just seems to get more and more and more every year. And this was my experience back in the day working in 10 Downing Street. We tried to cut this regulation and that regulation, and it's overwhelming. There's so much of it, and you get bogged down. And that's why flipping the whole thought process and saying, rather than choosing which regulations to cut, let's assume all of them go away and then choose the ones we want to keep. It's just a better way of going about it. That whole process is called sunsetting. Like the regulations, they expire within a certain time period unless you proactively choose to keep them. That's what they did in Idaho, 2019, as you say. They ended up cutting their regulatory code by 95%. Like, it made a really big difference. And now that state's rated as the best regulated in the country. So when you look, and we're the worst. I mean, the terrible thing about California, and this is one of the reasons, we moved here in 2012. I was inspired by California as being the place on earth that most represents business, innovation and energy and hustle and all the great things, enterprise, those things that really we think of as American values, even more so in California. But it's not true anymore. We're actually rated the worst state in the country for business, for the business climate. And that's been the case for 10 years. So you need to take all of it, the regulatory code, and just say, what do we really need to keep here? Because you talk to people, I mean, I'm on the road the whole time, you talk to business owners, particularly small business owners. It's unbelievable the amount of nonsense they have to deal with. And it's all overlapping, and they got to report to this bureaucratic agency and that one. Okay, here's a really good example. It's a small firm doing pest control up in the Sierras. And they have to report to the state pesticide control board exactly what they're using and where they're putting things, and to the Agriculture Commission in each county they operate in. That's 9 counties. Every single one of those requires a different process. Some of them you can upload it on a form online, others you have to do it on paper. And I said to this business owner, wow, what a nightmare having to do that every year. He said, not every year, every month.
Wow.
Every month. That's just a tiny example. You know, and every business will have stories like that. And so we've just got to simplify it and allow our businesses to grow and create jobs.
You will get pushback, though, from a supermajority in Sacramento.
Yes.
How do you work with that?
Well, look, we've been talking about my time back in the day in the UK government. It was a Conservative Prime Minister, David Cameron, who I worked for. But actually, it was a coalition government. It was the Conservative Party and the Liberal Democrat Party. And I was right there at the heart of that, helping to negotiate the coalition agreement, which is a policy agreement between 2 rival parties. We had fought each other in the election, then came together to make a government. It's a parliamentary system, so that sometimes happens. And then once we were in 10 Downing Street, I actually shared an office with my opposite number from the other party, Polly Mackenzie. We became good friends. We sat like this at the desk in 10 Downing Street, right next to the cabinet room, and we would argue and disagree about things, but we became really good friends, and we worked together. We couldn't settle every disagreement, but we really found a way to focus on practical things. And you know, the other thing, I'm doing this to win and change California for the better and make life better for families and businesses. And so when I'm the governor in early 2027, that will have been a political revolution in California. And I really would expect the legislature, even if it's run by Democrats, to take account of that and to enact the will of the people expressed in that election. So it's a question for them as well. How will they work with a governor from a different party? And I think that the answer is for both of us, work together to help people have a better life.
Okay, you say reduce taxes for workers. How do you do that?
So that's a really big one, because we all know about the cost of living, everything. We have the highest taxes in the country, the highest cost for pretty much every essential, housing, gas, electricity, water, all of it, the most expensive in the country. The quickest and simplest thing we can do to help people who are really struggling is to cut taxes for working people who are earning below a certain level. I mean, it's insane to me that if you're earning salary that really doesn't get you very far in California these days, 70 grand, 80 grand, you're paying 9.3% state income tax. It's crazy. That's a simple way of helping people. That's why, to keep it simple, we put in the level at 100,000. If you earn 100,000 or less, no state income tax. Now, that isn't a simple thing to do in terms of the revenue, because that's going to reduce the revenue coming in. And people will say, well, how can you afford to do that?
Especially with the deficit we're looking at.
Right. Well, we costed it out. I don't want to make promises that we can't keep. And the actual reduction in revenue from that tax change, plus simplifying the taxes over, it's a 7.5% rate, flat rate above 100,000. The total cost of all that would mean an 18.5% reduction in revenue. It sounds like a lot, but that would just be taking state spending back to what it was just before the pandemic. Gavin Newsom's budget, pre-pandemic. So this is not some crazy, unachievable thing. It's just getting back to sensible spending. And so I think it's all possible. It's all doable. We just have to win the election first.
And talk about the flat tax that you're proposing. You have that on your website.
Yeah, 7.5% for everyone and everything over 100,000.
Okay.
Again, one of the reasons that we need to do that, because I call it a pro-worker tax plan, but also pro-growth. We have the highest unemployment in the country for most of last year. Right now, I believe we're second or third highest. That's ridiculous. This is California, the highest unemployment in America. We're not creating enough good jobs. One of the reasons for that is businesses are leaving. Large, medium-sized businesses and new businesses are going elsewhere to start up because it's so complicated here and the taxes are too high and they're just putting people off. And so we've got to get to something more sensible so that we have a more attractive climate for companies. Here's a really good example. We've got a great company in the Bay Area where I live, NVIDIA, one of the leaders in AI. Fantastic company, world-beating company. The other week, they announced a massive new investment, $500 billion. None of it in California. It was in Texas and in Arizona, states where they have lower taxes, simpler regulation, make it easier to get things done. So all those good jobs, building new factories, new equipment, high-tech manufacturing, not coming here, it's going to Arizona and Texas. I want those jobs here. And one of the ways we get that is to reduce and simplify taxes, reduce and simplify regulation.
What would you say to the governor's news this week that California is this booming economy? We are now named the fourth largest economy, so things are not all that grim.
Well, it's true on a statistical basis. I'm proud of that. It's fantastic that we're the fourth biggest economy. I'd like us to be the third biggest. I think we can get there if we grow faster. But what's the point of having a big economy if it's not working for regular people? You can't take that fact, the fourth biggest economy, and go to the grocery store and buy anything with it. If we're not creating the jobs, if we're not giving people that basic level of economic security, we can afford to buy your home. We have the highest housing costs in the country. Barely anyone could even imagine buying their own home in California. So it's an economy that's unbalanced. It's very big, a lot of money coming in, but it's these big tech companies that don't employ very many people. You've got huge salaries at the top, but regular working people are suffering in California. There's an amazing fact that not enough people are aware of. It's a shocking fact. Today in California, nearly 1 million people don't have access to clean drinking water. So it's all very well to say fourth biggest economy. Let's do better for the people and families who actually live here.
All right, we're going to pause the conversation real quick because we have to take a quick break, but we're going to have more with Steve Hilton coming up on the other side of this break. All right, welcome back to Inside California Politics, the final part of our conversation with California's latest gubernatorial candidate, Steve Hilton. So, Steve, we wrapped up that last block. We were talking about policy before we sort of wrap up that whole topic. I want to ask you specifically about homelessness because you have a public safety section on your website, and homelessness is kind of grouped into that. And I know you were in San Francisco this past week touring the city, and this is such a big issue because the state in the last 5 years has spent $24 billion, and there are reports that the homelessness crisis has grown. And cities and counties are really trying to get their arms wrapped around this.
Yes.
Do you have a specific plan for this?
Yes. Number one, we have to enforce the law everywhere. It's illegal to live on the streets.
So arrest homeless people?
No, you lead it into number two, which is get them the help that they need. Because over 80% of people who are living on the streets have either mental health problems or drug or alcohol addiction or some combination of them. They need to be in treatment. And unbelievably, we passed a law here in 2016 called Housing First. That law makes it illegal for any organization helping homeless people getting state money to require any conditions for their housing. So no requirement to be sober, to go into treatment, to get any kind of help. So you've got the crazy situation where we're taking people from the streets, putting them into an apartment that often costs a fortune, $700,000, $800,000. I was just hearing numbers, $1 million per apartment, but they're still using drugs and they're still addicted and they're not being treated properly. So unless we get to the root causes in that way, fund that properly. And there's many more details. I give you one specific example on mental health. Most of the money that goes into mental health services is reimbursed federally from Medicaid. When Medicaid was set up, there was a rule put in place. It's the IMD rule, Institutions for Mental Disease, that means that if you have any institution with more than 16 beds, you don't get reimbursed. So that means we've got these small units, doesn't really make the money go very far. That was all from the 1960s. When we were worried about big asylums that were not humane.
Right.
That was years ago.
That was Reagan closed all of
we
this.
know how to do this better now. the first Trump administration put in place a waiver, so states could get a waiver from that and spend the money better. California never did that. It's a simple change we could make so that we get people the treatment that they need, so they're long-term removed from homelessness, not like quickly taken off the streets and they end up back there.
Okay, so we're running out of time here. A couple more questions I have for you. You mentioned the Trump administration, so I want to ask you about the president. Would you accept his endorsement if he gave it to you?
Yes. I mean,
and I ask that because a lot of California Republicans in the past have struggled with that.
Right.
So, and they've sort of run from that, and they wouldn't admit that they voted for him, and the no admission kind of is an admission. So I just...
No, not at all. Look, President Trump got more votes in California than any Republican candidate for a generation. He's the president of our country. I'm a proud American. Of course, I would proudly accept that.
Do you have conversations with him ever?
About that?
Or just in general? How well do you know?
Well, we've met a few times. He was a guest on my show. I've interviewed him a couple of times, and we talk from time to time. But I wouldn't say it's a close relationship, but a very friendly one.
Okay, we have about 30 seconds left. Do you think Kamala Harris is running for governor?
I don't know. Here's what I've heard. The donors in the Democratic Party machine have told her there is no support for her running for president, and so this is the only choice she has. My view is, the sad thing, when she talks about this, and her aides talk about it, it's always about her, that she doesn't want the last thing in her life to be, public life, to be certifying Trump's victory. She wants to be the first black woman governor. It's never about our problems in California. If she wants to be the governor, show us that you really understand the lives of people in California and how you would help them.
Steve Hilton, we have to leave it there. We appreciate you giving us some
time
here on Inside California Politics. Look forward to further conversations in the future, and stay safe out on the campaign trail.
Thanks so much, Nikki. Great to be with you.
Thank you. We'll be right back. Thanks for joining us for Inside California Politics. We'll see you back here next week.